Yes, but don't. There we
Right.
go. We are recording.
I consent to being recorded.
Yes.
What is it? Why are we doing this?
Actually, in one of
And what
the
are we doing?
in one of these breakout sessions from our weekly sessions for the graduates, Dogfish says, "Hey Jerry, how'd you like to interview Ben for the Harmonica UK magazine for some upcoming issue?" And I said, "I don't know why you picked me, but hey, I'll give it a go. It's like you can always just say this is rubbish and throw it away. I figure it's the worst case it could be."
That's the
So
worst case.
so I thought about it and I said, I haven't really done much interviewing except in my career. I interviewed a lot of people that I had to hire, and I
What was
said
your career, Jerry?
I was in information technology. I was a computer. I started off in computer hardware. When I was in the service. Uh, you know, making computers work before they were all on a little teeny chip type thing. It's like after
Oh,
vacuum tubes, but before tiny little central processor type thing. So way
okay.
back.
Tell me your life story. Oh no, wait, you're supposed to be interviewing me.
This is about you. So so anyway, I kind of said, well, maybe if I approach this as like I'd like to hire this guy, so let me just find out, a little bit about him. So I wrote down 747 questions here
Let's start with the last one first.
yeah. And I actually talked to a couple of people on the groups offline to say, what would you ask Ben about this kind of, and a lot of them came down to say, what started your music, not just harmonic, but what started you in music? You from a musical family, or did you just feel a need, or
I guess I was always, for some reason, in the school choir singing.
okay.
I was in that, and I even remember singing a solo when I was probably 8 or 9 in a school musical. I still have a recording of it. It's fantastic. Boy, you should see it. British warriors, your chief returns victorious. Anyway, so still remember it.
So you got bit by the bug of the
I,
audience participation, or just feeling like hey, I'm doing something cool, or it's
I just thought it was normal. I thought everybody did
mm,
it. I thought it was normal. So I was in the choir. I guess my parents went to church, so I had singing. I didn't particularly go along with that stuff, but the singing was good.
mm,
The singing was always good. And then at school, I was 10, and the head teacher said, "We've got a new boy coming to join the school, and he's a trumpet player, grade 3.
mm.
So we've engaged a trumpet teacher. Would anybody else like to join?" And my hand went up. I don't know why. That's how I
Wow.
started. That's how I started.
Gotcha. So, I mean, did you pursue that through a lot of years? I mean, how many years were you trumpet playing?
I still got one over here.
Yeah.
I don't play it so much these days.
Mm,
I guess around about that time, maybe even no, probably before,
mm.
I had an uncle who gave me a harmonica before that, so I'm probably 7, I guess.
Okay. What kind of harmonica was your first harmonica? What was it?
Tremolo.
A tremolo. Oh, okay.
And I remember playing. My grandfather used to do a little jig, a little jig, McNamara's dance. Actually, it's a reel, but he thought it was a jig.
Okay.
So I figured out that I could, if I was breathing out, I could play this. My name is McNamara. I'm the leader of.
Mm,
Then I'd have to breathe in to make it work.
mm.
So I figured out from the age of 7 that the breathing in and the breathing out was like a question and an answer.
Ah, well,
So I
cool.
thought that, so to me, that was obvious and simple and easy and no brains required.
So you didn't see a big challenge in what was going on. It just like kind of a little bit of a little natural, feeling there.
100% natural. Whereas the trumpet was not, it was really hard. It
Mm,
still is. So I struggled with the trumpet and did my grade exams up to grade 5.
mhm.
And I was learning Haydn's E flat trumpet concerto, reading the music, and I was finding it very difficult. I didn't really get much help and support from the system,
Hmm.
which is why now I like to find the best possible way for people to learn, which is blended learning, because that's what I didn't get. So I'm now redressing the balance. So this
Gotcha.
idea of having core training on books and videos and stuff as the core thing, reporting your progress back to a book or some peer groups, and then having one-to-one sessions. That's blended learning, and I can't think there's a better way of learning than
It's-
that.
So blended learning, that kind of defines your harmonica mastery course. I mean, that's
Yes, it
basically,
does.
I mean, is
Yes,
that,
I
did
was
the
told
two
that
come
by,
together, say, I need
yeah.
blended
Well,
learning and,
I was told by a university lecturer that what I've produced is called blended learning. I had no idea. I just
hmm?
put it together. So yes, those three pillars: the core training, which you work on your own, and then you report your progress on a daily basis back to a group of people, and you write it down and you video it. And then the third thing is one-to-one lessons in a group. That's what the blended learning is all about. And I didn't get that as a trumpet player. I just had half an hour once a week, and that was it, with two boys in one class with one teacher. And
That's
I
pretty,
found it,
yeah, that pretty much defines my trumpet thing. It's a half hour once a week kind of,
yeah.
you know,
And that was all they could manage. But of course, we did get into the orchestra, so there was more
hmm.
involvement. But I found the trumpet was always difficult. And when I got to playing the harmonica, I found I could do all the things that I'd been frustrated with on the trumpet. And also have another clear memory. I was probably 13, 14 or something like that, and being taken to see a play, an Alan Ayckbourn play, and we were taken by my parents, and we were taken past a pub in Bristol called the Old Duke, where they have trad jazz. And I remember seeing these guys, one on trumpet, all jumping around, playing this incredible music, which was not Haydn's E flat trumpet concerto, I don't think. And there was no music stands and no written music. And I said, they're getting it all wrong here. This is where they're going wrong. They're not reading it. They're making it all up as they go along. And that's completely not the way to do it. So that's how I discovered improvising. And I've always loved improvised music since then.
So when was this? About how old were you when you,
About 14 or
mm,
13. So that's in the 60s or early 70s. Early
wow.
70s.
Mm.
So that's when I discovered improvised music. I discovered that you could make it up as you go along if you want to. I had no idea that was possible.
It does sound like a far-fetched thing when you just say, people sit there and they how do you write and how do you compose music? You say, oh, well, they sit down and they do this and they twinkle it out and stuff, but now do it real time. And it's like,
Yeah.
it seems like a major leap, it just trying, if you, how do you define that to people? So,
I've heard improvising described as simultaneous composition and performance.
mm,
And also, I've heard it described as make it up as you go along.
yeah, yeah. So when did music sort of become your career? I mean, did you go into teaching? What was your early
Um,
jobs?
yeah. One thing I found about music, it was very useful. You got to meet lots of girls in the orchestra, in the school orchestra, which I would never have got to meet otherwise. Um, I have also found that we had to do a Monday afternoon activity, which was a military day. So you either had to be in the army or the navy,
Mm.
which I didn't like, or you could be in the military band, which only met for a half an hour on a Wednesday. So you had the whole of Monday off. So music worked in my favour tremendously.
These are some powerful driving factors you're defining here.
Absolutely, yeah. Then you could go and meet up with these girls that you met from the orchestra. And also, as a musician, you would go to concerts. You'd be taken out to concerts. Um, you would go in a choir. You'd go to competitions. You would go out as part of an orchestra. You would go and do gigs. You go and play
Mhm.
in old people's homes. So I've been doing gigs since I was 8.
Wow.
I mean, a gig being a, a playing music with other
With
people
a
in
yeah.
public.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess that's a gig.
Now
And playing.
those early gigs were they those were with trumpet and with sort of a band or orchestra type setting, or were you already
Yeah, we would go.
harmonica?
No, no harmonica. No,
Okay, good.
we'd go to old people's homes
Hmm.
and play Christmas carols to them, whether they liked it or not.
They were a captive audience usually. So,
Yeah, they lock them in.
mhm. Actually,
Um,
I did that same type of gigging at a local college. Had a bluegrass course,
oh,
and
nice.
we went to old folks' homes, and we had 37 guitars, one mandolin.
Oh, that was you.
That was me, and 27 singers. So it was, yeah, it was. I don't know if you
Fantastic.
could call it harmony, but there were a lot of voices. But it
Messy.
is. I mean, it's a great thing to get your feet wet in public performance, because you've got a very receptive audience, and I think they all appreciate it too. So I mean, it's like a win-win for
Yeah,
growing your music and helping people out too. So
yeah, yeah. Well, I played in the various orchestras right up till I was 18, playing trumpet and getting things very wrong in public performances. Handel's Water Music, the trumpet section stands up and goes ba 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 bum 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 ba bum ba ba dum. So I did that, and I noticed I was the only one standing up. And I sat down when I did my bit, and they all stood up and did their bit. So I was a bar out. You have to count 64 bars or something, and then you do your
before,
thing.
yeah.
So then moving to London, I took the trumpet with me, and every time I got it out of the box, everybody said, "Could you put it back in the box, please?" So I did no music really for 10 years
Mm.
in my from 18 to 25 or 28 or something. And then I gradually picked up a few other things like didgeridoo, Jew's harp, twanged on a guitar. And then I thought, no, I've got to do something. So I went and bought a brand new second-hand trumpet, which I have over here.
Mm.
Very expensive, £675.
Ooh.
And I thought, right, I'm going to go and join a jazz group. So I joined a jazz evening class, and I was a student there for probably 5 years, 6 years, as playing trumpet in a jazz group. And all that time, I'd started to watch the Blues Brothers movie. And the guy that I was working with, my chef, I was running wine bars. So my chef, who's a lapsed drummer, he and I both really loved the music. And we couldn't work out what that thing was that Elwood was playing.
Mm.
It sounded like a muted trumpet, like Miles Davis. But it turned out it was a harmonica. So we said, why don't we go down to the Bill Lewingtons and get ourselves some harmonicas? So we went there and bought 2 harmonicas in the key of E, they said you'd need,
Mm. Yeah.
because the blues is played in the key of E. So you need an E harmonica. So we bought those. And that's how I started on harmonica because of the Blues Brothers.
Well, that's a good incentive type thing. It's like, now does this still go along with playing music like that will get you close to the girls and popularity, or had that faded some?
That illusion is still there.
Yeah. Now,
I,
up through 18 and stuff, you said that the your trumpet early, you got that half hour during the schools and stuff. How was the musical training courses there? You got a day off because you went into the military band,
yeah.
But I mean, was there a lot of school encouragement in music and training in music? Did it kind of vary through the years, or?
When from the age of 13 onwards in the big school,
Mm,
my trumpet teacher, who was a half an hour once a week, used to sit there smoking his pipe and just sort of mumbling.
mm,
So I don't really think I got anywhere with that. But I did join the orchestra and the military band, the
mm,
school orchestra, and then there was a band needed for a theatrical thing. So I joined a
mm,
sort of a jazz band there,
mm,
played rock around the clock or a sort of blues or rock band. I don't know what you call it.
mm,
So I'm probably 15, 16 at that point.
mm,
So there were a lot of opportunities. We had to play a lot. We had to practice every day. Our parents were paying for lessons, so we were told you have to
Yeah.
do it. And also it got us out of lessons, which is good. So yeah, it was a good thing on the
It's a
whole. I
good
met
thing.
some interesting people. Yeah, it's a good thing to get into music.
I know
Absolutely.
that over here we have, they start talking budgets, and so often you hear them cutting the arts and music,
Right.
session and stuff. And it's, I think that, music and music itself, learning is a very important thing in dealing with life. I mean, I think that it's fun, it's inspirational, it makes you think, and I think it can help you in other situations too. It's not just the blues or jazz or something. I think that the discipline to go in there, I think, can be carried on to other portions of life. But maybe that's just me.
It's no, you're right. You're right. I think you have to stick at it. So you need stickability.
Mm,
Work. You need to be able to tolerate doing a lot of difficult stuff without much result. You're working with a team when you're playing in a band or an orchestra or any group.
hmm
So you're having to be a team member. Having to learn a lot of skills like reading music. That's a skill to learn. Trying to watch a conductor, then learning about performance, and then turning up and dressing correctly is quite a lot of things. Which I guess you, as a kid, you just do it, and it becomes normal.
So when
So
did your music become a job, monetarily, helpful to
right,
when did you go from enjoying it, just, doing the thing to say, wait a minute, I can sort of make a living at this almost, or, was there a
yeah,
turning point, or did it just kind of sneak up on you, or,
no, there was a precise turning point.
okay.
I'd started learning harmonica and enjoying it, and I was having lessons with a guy called Brendan Power
Mm,
in London in probably 1990
wow.
or thereabouts, or perhaps 89. I don't remember, somewhere around there. And he he'd just come from New Zealand, and he had set up a series of evening classes, night school. I think maybe 5 classes, something like that. And he had to be away for 1 week, and he said, "Would I take the class on a
Mm.
Wednesday?" And I said, "No, you have to be crazy. I don't know anything about this." And he said, "Just come and watch." So I did. And during the class, he said, "This is Ben. He's taking next week's class." Very good natured. It wasn't a sly thing. It was a good natured thing.
Yeah.
And he said, as a matter of fact, we're going to split into 2 groups now. You lot are with me. You lot are with Ben. Let's go. So he's a very pragmatic man,
Mm.
and he doesn't take prisoners. And he pushed me into that. And I found, even at that very early stage, I could answer their questions
Mm.
quite well,
Um,
to my surprise.
yeah. Now, where would you rate yourself as a harmonica player at that time? I mean, were you like
Beginner.
a
Beginner.
beginner, a little bit beyond beginner, just right at beginner type thing?
No, a little bit beyond beginner.
Okay, so.
Brendan was introducing me to Charlie McCoy,
Hmm.
J.J. Milto, Howard Levy, and I'd had some tuition in blues before that.
Okay.
Brendan's not big on blues, but I'd been working with an American guitarist who played a little bit of harmonica, but was really good on blues. So I'd sort of learnt a bit from him. I don't
Wow.
remember his name.
So Brendan must have seen something in you to say, "Take it away, Ben." It's like,
Maybe I
it's like,
was his only student. I don't know.
well, if he split up a class, you couldn't have been his only student.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's true.
So
So
that
then
that
a
does
little
sound
bit,
like a turning point. It's like you're on.
that was the turning point. And at the time, I had a sandwich business,
Hmm,
which was starting to curl up at the edges and eventually went bust.
hmm,
So I was looking for other things to do, looking for a new direction.
hmm.
A few months later, Brendan was given the job or offered the job of taking over the accordion chair
Hmm.
in the Riverdance show.
Okay. Hmm.
I think was that with Michael Flatley?
Yeah, that sounds, yeah. Michael Flatley and Riverdance sound like two names that go
Sounds like
together.
it was.
Yeah. Mhm.
So he then went on tour with Riverdance for, I don't know, a couple of years, 3 years, touring the world. So he said, "You better take over all my evening classes. I'm done with that stuff now." So I took over 5 1-hour classes and very quickly realized that somebody was going to find out that I didn't know shit. So I enrolled at Goldsmiths, University of London, 1 day a week for 2 years on a course called Community Music. I don't know, Community Music.
Community music. Oh, that's interesting. It's not a title I've heard of in pursuing music. Community
Yeah.
music. Yeah. Okay.
And what we learned there was we were all musicians of different areas, different qualities, different instruments. And what we learnt was how to make a living teaching music in the community.
Wow. Now, how old were you at this stage? In this 2 year?
This is 93,
Okay.
1993. So minus 59.
Okay.
What,
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
I'll
60,
do the math. I'll do the math. We won't worry about that now. So,
in my 30s.
okay.
In my
Wow.
30s.
Hmm. Wow.
So suddenly I became a community musician.
Mhm.
I did my 5 evening classes every week, got paid, and I did some other things. Like I worked in Hammersmith in London with a day centre for people with multiple disabilities,
Mhm.
doing general music, no harmonica.
Okay. Mhm.
And then we worked in prisons. We did a Saturday class, father and son class
Hmm.
for music, for bonding, really, just community stuff.
Well,
Fathers
that
bring
sounds
son.
very pretty interesting. Father and son music type stuff. Yeah.
It was very cool.
Mhm.
And then I got involved with a company called Drake Music that still exists. One of the patrons is a guy called Jules Holland, who's a famous boogie woogie piano player in the UK. Jules, Jolls Holland. Um, and so I was then volunteering with Drake once a week, every Thursday, all day working with them, trying to build electronic musical instruments
Okay.
to work with people, mostly people with cerebral palsy, but
Hmm.
other disabilities as well. So we would construct things which had a switch. So
Hmm.
if their movement was they could move one elbow, they could hit that switch and it would play something that we had decided they wanted to play.
Gotcha.
So we would construct instruments, electronic instruments, computer instruments, sound beams. So where you break the beam, a sound is triggered. So
Mm-hmm.
MIDI triggers, and people would trigger that with eye movements or head movements or a switch. Or and our most of our clients couldn't speak. They were in wheelchairs, couldn't speak, but we made music.
Wow. That sounds like a challenging position to be put in. It's like, but it's got to be a rewarding thing to get some music coming out when you. I mean,
Yeah,
how long did this go on? This sounds like. I mean, you could do a whole segue on this particular time period, and
I did it for a good few years,
yeah.
probably 6 or 7 years,
Wow.
and we went on. It developed into holidays, musical holidays for disabled people, which were 1 week or 2 weeks long. So you'd be residential in somewhere.
Mhm.
And then shows. We went to Dublin and did a show. Took all of our guys, and I started doing a bit more harmonica at that time. So I played harmonica with Jules Holland.
Mhm.
That's a name drop there, right there.
Yeah.
Played harmonica live with Jules Holland at Drake, this company. So I'd also started playing in a band at that point. So a year after starting harmonica properly, I was in a band doing gigs, and then I went to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama for a 2 week summer jazz course, and then the Jamie Aebersold summer jazz course, trying to learn jazz on the harmonica, or diatonic harmonica, and various bands formed out of that. So I started playing in other bands. So by then I was in two or three bands in London.
Sounds like a lot of juggling.
A lot of juggling,
Yeah.
yeah, and trying to get paid for music. Didn't
Hmm.
I stopped. So I guess in 93, 94, 95. At that point I never had a proper job again. So it's kept me alive.
Mm. Yeah. Now back to this blend style of teaching type stuff and the harmonica mastery. Now that's just within the last 2.5, 3 years that you launched this.
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
The I had been making video courses,
Mhm.
each being an hour and a half roughly, for 15 years. I've been making one a year. One a month.
Okay. Mhm.
So I had a lot of material. And then I started writing books on the harmonica, one a year for 20 years. The first book I sent to Larry Adler to get his approval, and he wrote back and said it stinks. So I quoted that. So
So,
I had the books and the videos, and that's when lockdown came.
yeah.
That's all I had because throughout the previous 20 years, from 1996 until lockdown, my day job was teaching children to play the harmonica in primary schools.
Now, how did you land that gig? I mean, it's like, were you approached by the schools, or did you go in search of and say, I'm a master of teaching, harmonica here. You all need me.
Well, it ended up with us having 600 children
Mm.
a week to teach and a team of 10 people. And when COVID came, that all stopped. They closed the
Whoa,
schools.
yeah.
It had started to tail off a bit, so it wasn't 600 at that point. We peaked at 600 perhaps a year earlier, so it had started to tail off. But the way I got into it was when I was living in London. My neighbour was the musical director at Dulwich College in London, and I lived near there. And we were having a beer, and he said, "Why don't you start teaching this instrument in my school?" So that's how that started. It was the neighbour next door, but one neighbour, forget his
Yeah.
name,
Yeah.
said, "Why don't you come into assembly and do a demonstration and see if you can get some students?" And that's
Oh.
exactly what I did, and that's exactly what happened. So
Next
that was
door,
Dulwich,
next door over a beer down the street, and here we go. We're
yeah.
on.
So that was Dulwich College was where I first
Okay.
started in London,
Oh,
South London. Did that for a a year, and then I moved back out of London because I was making less and less money the more I got into music. Couldn't afford to stay in London.
mm,
So I'm sold up and moved to Bristol, where I'm from originally, and did exactly the same thing. Started approaching private schools
okay.
and offering my services, and then local councils. And this is 96 now, 1996. And within a year or so, I had a completely full diary of teaching primary schools in the west of England for every hour that I could,
Wow.
plus evening classes as well, which I'd started. I did a harmonica class and a blues band class for all instruments in Bristol
Wow.
at a place called the Folk House, where later Harmonica UK held its festivals for many years. So that was the tie-up.
Now, how did you get involved with Harmonica UK? As a
I think that was through Brendan
hmm?
because he wanted to go to one of the festivals and invited me, or I don't remember exactly. Anyway, I had a car and he didn't,
Oh,
so I drove him there.
yeah.
I don't mean to say that he was trying to get me to give him a lift.
Yeah.
Although that may have been the case, I really don't remember. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, we both went there and quite enjoyed it. And then I got the magazine, and then I started getting more interested as I thought, well, I'm becoming a professional harmonica teacher now.
Hmm.
The thing with the teaching was that it wasn't very much money, but I always got paid.
Mm.
The gigs
Yeah.
was the opposite.
Yes.
Very often we had a debt at the end of the evening to pay the doorman. Very often we'd have to have a whip round and you owe £5
Yeah.
and you've just been playing for 2 hours and it's 1 a.m. And I thought, this making a living as a performing musician, you've got to be really good or really lucky or really determined.
Hmm.
But making a living as a teacher has got to be an easier way to go. And I'm more of a backroom. No, that's not quite right. I'm not so driven by being on the front of a stage. I do like performing,
Hmm.
but as a teacher, I perform,
Gotcha.
and that ticks my performance box pretty much. So I don't have any great desires right now to be in the band on the front of a stage, getting adulation from the crowd.
So you're not a Rob Paparazzi. He's kind of the front man, kind of you think of that live on that feedback, type stuff. That
Yeah, no, I'm not that.
mm, cool.
I have tried that. I
Mm,
was teaching on cruise ships. I was teaching harmonica on cruise
mm,
ships for about 10 years. That would be like one or two cruises a year, not all the time.
mm,
And during that time, I thought I would like to be a solo harmonica cabaret artiste
mm,
and make a living on the high seas just doing back to back contracts playing. So I put together some shows and had a go at it. And I just found it was too much of a roller coaster. The nervousness of getting ready for a show,
mm-hmm.
doing it was easy. And then coming down afterwards is the crash.
Yeah.
And then you've got to do it again. And even on a cruise ship, you're reliant on a cruise director to put you on stage, and they're usually drunk.
Yeah. A lot of that on the high seas. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was on a cruise for a month, and I was engaged to do performance, and the cruise director didn't like the look of me, so he didn't put me on.
Ah.
I mean, once or twice. That's it. I think I did one half-hour gig in a month.
Okay. So he said this isn't going to work.
Yeah, and also I found out that all the other performers that I'd met there were quite unhappy, no real roots. They never really had any friends, and there was a lot of boredom, drinking, smoking. Not really anything I would want to be doing long term.
Yeah. So then you got involved with Udemy and your books and your videos for
Yeah,
until COVID came along. So
yeah.
COVID
So I
comes
think I
along.
joined. I think I joined Udemy in 2013
Okay.
and or 2012, and started making videos, one a month, as I said. Um, no, it's not 20 years, is it? It's well, anyway, from
Yeah.
2012.
Mm.
What is that? 10 years.
10 years. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And that's been very good. So I was doing that combined with the teaching in schools. I was doing all the teaching myself in schools for quite a while, and then some people wanted to join in and help me. So that became a little bit of a business.
Hmm.
Um, so that was my living, was from teaching kids in school, doing videos on Udemy, and private students and gigs.
Now, from the teachings in school or private students, any superstars come through your ranks, type thing that students
Yeah,
that
they
you
should be
remember?
they should be here any moment. I think I've introduced 10,000 children to music through the harmonica in that time, in that probably 20-year period.
Oh,
95 I started,
mm.
nearly 20 years. So I've
Wow.
planted the seed,
Yeah.
and I think it's up to them now. I do meet well, I do meet young people around here who remember me,
Mm.
and very often I would see them at gigs, and they would say, "Oh, I'm a drummer, or now I'm a guitarist." So I think it may have had some effect on their lives. I hope.
Well, yeah, I think that your approach to, teaching harmonica and stuff, I mean, one, I think one of your big focus is on the rhythmic properties, of playing the harmonica. And I think that that is such a foundational thing for all kinds of music, whether it's bass, drum, guitar, or that kind of thing. Without the rhythm, you've got cacophony. So,
Yes, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing.
exactly, yeah.
So I've always been taught that rhythm is the first step of music, and then harmony,
Hmm.
chords, and then melody on top. So I've
Hmm.
tried to teach it that way.
Gotcha. So we come along to COVID, and so your teaching from the schools is. You said it was starting to thin out a little bit. You weren't
Yes,
quite, not
in
not
the
like a rapid decline, or just a little bit, kind of.
well, schools in the UK
Mm.
changed from government-run schools to independent. What do they call them? Not asylums. It's a word like that.
Yeah,
Um, I can't think of the word, Jerry.
yeah.
Uh,
Institutions.
Something like that.
Mm.
Independent. Geez, what is the word? Academies. I think it's academies.
Okay. Sounds like a
So
good word. Okay.
we,
Yeah.
we might have to check on that. But schools suddenly were allowed to become academies, if that's the right word.
Gotcha. So
And
this is
they,
right at the time that you reached your peak, and then this was happening, or was this?
yeah,
Okay.
this is at the peak.
Gotcha. Okay.
When they became academies,
Hmm.
they could then control their own money,
Gotcha.
and they didn't want, they didn't let new businesses like mine take root. So we could no longer approach schools
Hmm.
and say, "Hello, can we come and do a demonstration in assembly and teach
Gotcha.
harmonica for you?" Before we could do that, this is in my area here. I don't know about the rest of the country.
Hmm.
So we used to be able to just knock on the door and say, "Hello, can I speak to the head teacher?" And he'd say, "Yeah, come on in. Let's have a coffee. Let's talk it through." As soon as they became academies, you could never get an appointment.
Hmm.
You could never see anybody. You could never speak to anybody. You could never get any response from letter, phone call, door knocking, email, nothing, no response. So it became clear that this was a dead end
Hmm.
business, and all businesses dwindle at some point. So it was starting to dwindle, and then all these schools were saying, "Well, we don't want you taking children out of classes because the teachers are complaining because they get a bonus on exam results."
I gotcha. Okay. Follow the
So we,
dollar. Yeah. Yeah.
so we just gradually got squeezed out, as you said before, the arts.
Hmm.
The arts, music especially, got squeezed out of primary schools. We would find we could only teach during the lunch hour, or we could only do an after school club, or we could only teach in a cupboard, or we could only teach when there was no one available.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So we got politely squeezed out. It still
Uh,
kept going in the loyal schools, but I couldn't take on any new ones.
hmm.
So the end was in sight. It became much harder work. We became like a pest rather than a guest.
Gotcha. Pest versus guest. Okay. Yeah. I guess
They
that's not a good thing.
it's a terrible thing. the individual teachers would recognize, and head teachers would recognize, that music is good for kids, but they had exams and data and analytics and
Yeah.
they call it SATs exams,
Okay. Hmm.
and they would get funding based on the results, I think. So they had to have as good as possible results, academic results. So things like hobbies, music, perhaps even sport, I don't know, probably art, those things were gradually squeezed out during that period. So the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, I think I've often heard that the downfall of modern society was the Excel spreadsheet when they could quantize every little, nickel dime type thing that was going on there and say, what do I
Yeah,
get for this, And it's like, wait a minute.
yeah,
I-
exactly. So the point,
Analytics.
yeah, so the point of COVID,
Hmm.
the schools thing stopped, private students stopped, gigs stopped, and I was also doing team building for companies, corporate team building, like a 1 hour event in a 2 day conference with Harmonica, 120 people, something like that. So that all stopped as well, and we had gigs in the diary for that. So suddenly there was zero income
Ah,
except from the videos and the books, which was an income enough to keep me alive,
hmm.
but not very exciting. So that at that point, I had to do something serious, and I've got some help and set up harmonica mastery.
So the birth of the blend, huh? Or the
Yeah,
sort of everything kind of came together to.
yeah, through desperation.
Mhm. Well, it sounds like you've adapted to a lot of situations through gear and been able to come out.
And this thing, harmonica mastery, is the best thing I've ever built for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had 150 students come through the program since its inception a year and a half ago. And looking at the reviews on harmonicamastery.com, people seem to be pretty happy. Obviously, I didn't print the ones which aren't happy.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not true. There have been none that I didn't choose to post on the website.
Well, having been through the 90 days twice now, it's like there's a very, very small portion of people that don't enjoy the concept, the camaraderie, the material that's presented there, and um, occasionally you'll see some people that aren't as involved as others, that
Yep.
kind of, but I don't think I've heard too many negative complaints that throughout the process. So I think that like you say, that blend and having the building blocks with your courses that you put together
Yeah.
and stack in this order and do that. I mean, you had a strong base
I had a
to
strong base, and
yeah.
actually there's too much material there. So,
Hmm.
and I keep writing more. So the next job with Harmonica Mastery is to reframe the curriculum and simplify it
Gotcha. Mhm.
and produce some kind of Excel spreadsheet and a flow chart to show people which direction to take. Maybe a flow chart for people who only want to play blues,
Yeah.
or another one for people who really don't want to play blues at all, but
Hmm.
they want to play melodic tunes on the harmonica.
So have sort of this is the foundation of everything you need, regardless of where you go. But at this point, you can go left for the blues, or right
Yeah,
for Irish music, or straight ahead
yeah,
for jazz, and
exactly.
hmm.
So I think as it grows, it's getting a bit top heavy. It needs. I now need to simplify.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and also to offer a new level, which I think I will call the elite program,
Okay.
which will be more tailor-made and have more one-to-one sessions
Hmm.
included.
Now that's one thing in looking at different harmonica classes and YouTubes and all this kind of stuff is I think in a lot of other instruments you can be a grade A piano player, you can be a virtuoso piano player. It's like how do you rate a harmonica player? I mean, it's like there are different sets of skills and stuff. You said that you started gigging when you were a beginner. You started teaching basically when you were a beginner,
Right, right.
with Brendan. Uh, but it's I think that some of the things have you can get like you get a star for this or a double star for that. For different instruments you're a grade one, two, three, four. I think that there are professional ratings that you can get on that. Is there any sort of I guess milestones in your learning process? To say if you want to
Yeah,
be a blues player, you gotta know A single notes, B bending, or A rhythm, single notes, bending, chords. Put these together and learn a 12 bar sequence, and now you get two gold stars. So I mean, it's like I think if you go into this simplicity type thing, you have to sort of I don't know, I'm sure what I'm trying to say. You have to identify these cornerstones of skill. Is that
yeah. Um, I think it will also need some degree of self-assessment
hmm
to work out if you've done enough to move on.
gotcha, yeah.
The other thing that's coming in terms of assessment is there's a company in the UK called Rock School,
hmm
and we are in the middle of producing a harmonica syllabus which
yeah,
has graded exams.
gotcha.
So far, we've nearly completed the premier and debut levels, which are for primary school children, on the four-hole harmonica.
Hmm?
And the next step will be grade one, two, three, four for diatonic and chromatic players. So the grade system will come about very soon.
Okay, cool. Dave
The,
Barrett has something similar in his
he
lesson
does,
things. I can't remember
yes.
what it's called, but he has levels there that.
Yeah, it's bluesharmonica.com.
Mhm.
And he has a traffic light system, red, green, and gold.
Okay.
And I think you earn different colors as you. I don't know if he assesses them personally.
Yeah, that I think gets into the how you define it type stuff because it's everybody sounds a little bit different on the harmonica playing the same thing. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
in the masters you can recognize, say, oh, that's Sonny Boy. It's like, or that's Big Walter. Or is that and
It's a tricky concept. Should you examine
mm-hmm,
people's playing
mm-hmm,
or not? You would in the trumpet, yes, you would do classical stuff. They do. They always have.
mm-hmm.
But do people really want that with the harmonica? Certainly with the diatonic harmonica. I don't know. Maybe people prefer just keep it in their back pocket,
Mm-hmm.
tap the tobacco out of it, and blow some. Are
Yeah,
we
yeah,
are we taking it more seriously than it needs to be taken? And I think the answer is for some people, they want to be examined. And for some people, they don't care, they just want to play.
okay, yeah. Mm-hmm,
So I think if we can try and provide both ways of learning.
mm-hmm.
See, with the system I have, when people do their daily video diary, they have to reflect on that. They can see their progress without anybody saying anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the posting of your wins. It's a weekly wins, and I think that gives a self-affirmment type thing. It's like, okay, yeah, I realize that I've accomplished this, and posting their wins, I think, sort of cements that also. So I think another great part of the program type thing. But it is
Yes.
that blend is a powerful powerful concept. I think it's definitely working. So.
Yeah, it does seem to work.
Mhm. Now, how many countries have you done gigs in? I mean, you've
Well, if you include the high seas,
there
every
you go. Yeah.
every continent except uh, what's the one at the top? The
Uh,
Arctic.
Arctic. Yeah.
I don't know.
Many, huh?
Many. Well, I've
Now,
taught in Asia. I've taught in Asia quite a bit,
mm,
in Vietnam and Thailand. I've played. I guess I've played
mm,
in most continents,
mm,
um, but not really gigged. I'm not much of a one for gigging
mhm.
days.
Yeah, it sounds like you get your reward more from the accomplishments of your students and being there for them. Uh,
Yes, I found it's more rewarding for me to put my students on stage
mm,
and me take a back seat.
mm. Well,
Generally.
I thank you for that because I had never really been on stage before I went through the first time type stuff, and now it's like
Now you're a regular.
regular. Yeah, it's I'm starting to. I'm never going to do this making a living. It's like all any funds we get coming and tips and stuff go to a local charity type stuff. But it's getting to the, can I do this one because I have this other, so it's having to schedule gigs is something that I never thought I'd have to do. So
Fantastic. I think you're probably one of the most active of all the students doing gigs.
it sounds like there's some people there with broad music skills, and it's interesting to see some of these people start
Yeah.
harmonica that are bass players, drummers,
Yes.
guitar players, saying they just want to get pick this up so they can get as good as Bob Dylan, and then on the third day they set another goal.
Bob Dylan's music is better than it sounds.
Exactly. So, if looking back on this, are there? I mean, it sounds like you've plotted a pretty good course for yourself. I mean, are there things that say, if I'd have known, I should have, kind of,
No,
no.
it's just been following an unplanned route.
Hmm? It's the journey, huh?
Yeah, I didn't plan any of it. It's stumbling, lurching from crisis to crisis.
Well, I've used up almost an hour of your time, and I'm going to have to try to see what I can. Any last words of
Request?
wisdom for people
Any last
that,
request? Could I have a
yeah.
cigarette?
No, you're not going before the firing squad. I think that's. Well, I appreciate your time, and I think that I'm going to go through this recording and try to type up some stuff and share it with Dave, and I'll keep you posted on where I'm at with it, and we'll see what comes out of this.
Yeah, I think the final thoughts would be if you're wanting to really learn the harmonica and really focus and really take it seriously, then blended learning seems like a good route.
I totally agree with that. I think that the group and putting a little bit of accountability behind you when you're dealing with these people, like the buddy group saying, next week I want to accomplish this. I think it just gives you that extra little bit of a push that you need, sometimes when it can be very frustrating trying to learn something with
Yeah,
so many facets of it. And I think every little push you can get is helpful. And I think, like you say, that uh, blended approach is a working machine.
I'll quote one American student, it wasn't you, Jerry. He said, "So wait a minute, if I understand this correctly, you're going to hold my hand and kick my butt." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "I'm in."
Well, I totally thank you, Ben, and hopefully I can blend down some of the good parts of this. So I
Yeah, I hope
appreciate
it's
it.
not hope it's not too much work for you, Jerry. It's a couple of hours, isn't it?
It'll be a little bit of time, yeah. Well, I'll see if I can get some kind of gizmo to transpose the the recording into written word.
That's a great idea. Well, talk to Dave because he's got exactly that.
Oh,
He's
that's true.
he's
Yeah.
got an app which does that for you. It's called Seeing AI.
See, okay.
Seeing
I
AI.
hadn't thought of that. Yeah. Well, that may cut it down a little bit, but still, it's going to be a little bit of work. But I've really enjoyed this. It's like I feel like I knew some of the things, but a lot of surprises in there. So it's
Okay.
I appreciate it. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll probably see you in another hour. So it
Yes, sir. You're coming to see Roly Platt.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I better put the word out. I've forgotten to tell people about that.
All
We've had
right.
so much going on with the funeral here that I've forgotten about it really. But anyway,
That yeah, that's they're not going by your house yet, or they
should be here any minute.
any minute. All right. I think they covered every other road.
If I was living in Windsor.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, Jerry. Thank you so
Thank,
much. Appreciate it.
thank
All right.
you. Bye
Bye for
bye.
now. Bye. Bye.